Misdiagnosis of terminal illness. After my in-laws forced me to leave, I will never look back. In November, Stockholm was already dusted with fine snowflakes, sticking to the glass windows of the Karolinska Institute like shredded cotton. My fingers, clamped around the diagnosis report, had gone numb. The words suspected pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma stared up at me in black print, cold and sharp as shards of ice despite the warm yellow lamplight. Swedish chatter drifted down the corridor, mingled with the clink of medical equipment, but I might as well have been trapped in a vacuum. All sounds felt distant and faint. 3 years earlier, on a snowy day just like this, Marcus had proposed to me on the steps of Stockholm Cathedral. Snow dusted his blonde hair, and his blue eyes shone brighter than the stained glass windows of the dome, as he held out a diamond ring set with a pigeon's blood ruby, the Nelson family heirloom. When his mother Ingrid had placed it in my palm, she'd emphasized repeatedly, "This goes to the woman who can hold the family together." Along with the ring, Marcus had transferred 200,000 kronor to my account. "Start up funds for our new home," he'd said. "Everything will be okay with me by your side, Bella." Back then, I'd believed him. This Swedishman, who'd taken time off work to make ginger tea when I had the flu and left me hot cocoa when I painted late into the night, would be my rock in this foreign land. But when I pushed open the door to our apartment, the familiar scent of cedar was gone, replaced by Ingrid's perfume and the shrill tone of Camilla, my sister-in-law. "You're just too soft, Marcus. If that Italian immigrant really has cancer, she'll drag the entire Nelson family down with her." Camilla was perched on the sofa, a Yorkshire Terrier in her lap. She fell silent the moment she saw me, but her eyes raked over me like I was merchandise up for inspection. Marcus stood by the kitchen door, a coffee mug in hand, his expression blurred by the steam curling from the rim. "Bella? What did the doctor say?" He spoke first, his voice strained with poorly concealed tension. I laid the report on the coffee table. Camilla pounced on it like it was a trophy, scanning the page before letting out an exaggerated gasp. "Oh my God. Pancreatic adenocarcinoma. Mom was right all along." Ingrid emerged from the bedroom, her camel cashmere coat immaculate, a document in her hand. She held it out to me directly. "Bella, this is the divorce agreement. The lawyer drew it up already." I didn't take it, just fixed my gaze on Marcus. He avoided my eyes, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "Mom, don't rush this. The doctor said it's only suspected." "Suspected is enough." Ingrid's voice rose. "I asked my private physician, survival rates for this kind of cancer are less than 10%, and the treatment costs would drain every penny we have. Marcus still has to remarry, to have children. He can't let you hold him back." She pointed to a clause in the agreement. "You can take half of the 200,000 kronor, but the ring must be returned. It belongs to the Nelson family, and it can't stay with someone who's—" She paused, letting the unspoken words hang in the air like an icy dagger to my heart. "A liability." "A liability." I laughed, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Is that what I am to you now?" Camilla chimed in immediately. "Sister-in-law, don't put it so harshly. We're doing this for your own good too. Your parents are all the way in Italy. If you really get bedridden, do you expect Marcus to take time off work every day to care for you? The Nelsons have a reputation in this neighborhood. What will people think if they say we married a sick woman? How can we hold our heads high?" Finally, Marcus looked up, but his words were for me. "Bella, don't argue with them. Mom and Camilla are just panicking. Why don't you stay at the studio for a few days? Give everyone time to cool down." I froze. So this was his idea of defending me, telling me to run away. I didn't leave that night. I curled up on the guest room sofa, listening to Ingrid and Marcus argue in the living room. "If you don't get a divorce, I'll move to a nursing home." "Mom, stop pushing me." Their words pricked like needles, one after another, into my heart. The next day at the studio, I discovered even bigger trouble awaited me. The Aurora-themed illustration project I'd been leading had been handed over to Lena, a Swedish girl who always muttered about foreigners stealing jobs. As she passed my desk, she deliberately held her coffee cup close to my sketches, smiling sweetly. "Bella, the boss says you need rest. I'll take care of this project for you." When the boss called me in, his tone was vague but threatening. "Your situation is affecting team morale. If this gets any more public, we'll have no choice but to terminate your contract." In the break room, I heard Lena gossiping with colleagues. Word is she married Marcus just to get Swedish residency. Now her true colors are showing. Marcus is so unlucky, marrying a sick woman who's nothing but trouble. The mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. In the puddle of spilled coffee, I saw my own red, tear-streaked eyes. What broke me completely came that afternoon, when I went to pick up the students from my part-time illustration class. One parent grabbed her child and stormed off, muttering to the others, "Don't let your kids stay around her, who knows if she's contagious." Later, I found out Camilla had spread that lie in the parent group. I left before finishing the class, wandering the icy streets for hours. The snow in Stockholm was colder than any winter I'd known in Rome. That Friday evening, Ingrid had summoned not just the Cornelsen family members, but also Great-Aunt Elsa, Marcus's father's older sister, a formidable woman who volunteered at the local church and spoke with unshakable authority. Around the long conference table, I sat at the far end like a defendant. Camilla struck first, slamming a receipt for my new paintbrushes onto the table. "You knew you might be sick, and you still wasted Marcus's money. His year-end bonus will all go to filling your black hole." She even pulled out a printed sheet, my grocery receipts for imported fruit. "These are all non-essentials. You're deliberately squandering his money." That was my own illustration fee. I slammed my fist on the table, but Great-Aunt Elsa rapped her knuckles on the wood, her tone final. "Isabella, when you married into the Nelson family, your money became Marcus's too. Every krona of this family's funds must be spent wisely." Marcus's father spoke up then, nodding at the family portrait on the wall. "The Nelsons have lived here for 3 generations. We've never had someone drag the family down. Marcus, you need to think clearly, your marriage isn't just between 2 people. It's the family's honor on the line." Ingrid chimed in immediately. "Dad's right. Even if you earned that money yourself, you should be saving it for emergencies now, not wasting it on paintbrushes and fruit." Not a single person at the table spoke up for me. Marcus stared at his hands, his fingers digging into the couch cushions until his nails whitened. It wasn't until Great-Aunt Elsa said, "Marcus, if you can't see reason, you can forget about inheriting any family business," that he finally looked up. His eyes were filled with conflict, but when he spoke, his words were for me. "Bella, they have a point. Can you just endure this for my sake?" In that moment, it felt like my heart was being torn apart. I thought back to when we first met, when he'd taken me to see the aurora in Tromsø. In the snow, he'd tucked my hands into his coat pocket and said, "Bella, you'll never be alone in Sweden." But now, for the sake of inheriting the family business, he could casually ask me to endure. What cut deeper was when the meeting ended, Cousin Anna pulled me aside secretly, shoving a business card into my hand. "This is a therapist I know. You should go see her, don't actually sicken yourself into clinging to our family out of desperation." Her tone dripped with contempt, as if I were some calculating fraud. I crumpled the card and threw it into the snow. Marcus stood nearby, watching everything, and did not come to my defense. Those had been nothing but snowbound lies, gone the moment the sun rose. But things were about to get worse. That weekend, when I went to the hospital to schedule a biopsy, I discovered our joint account had been frozen. Marcus had done it. I called him, furious, but he sounded indignant. "Mom said you're emotional right now. What if you get scammed into useless treatments? I'll pay for the biopsy, but you have to submit the receipt for reimbursement." Reimbursement? My hands shook with anger. "Marcus, I'm your wife. What I need right now is support, not a financial audit." He cut me off, exasperated. Bella, can't you be reasonable? I'm stuck in the middle. My friends are all saying I married a bottomless pit. Where's my dignity? That sentence was a poisoned knife piercing my last illusion. After hanging up, I emptied my savings and all my illustration fees to scrape together the money for an urgent biopsy at a private hospital. When I walked out, the snow was falling harder. I video called my mother in Rome, but she only sighed. Bella, endure it. Sweden has good welfare. Who will support you if you get divorced? Ingrid is only thinking of her family. Don't be so stubborn. Even my own mother told me to compromise. I stood in the snow, watching the flurries swirl around me, and felt a bone-deep loneliness I'd never known in this country. I finally understood. I was completely alone in this so-called family crisis. As a foreigner, I had no right to defend myself in the Nelson household. As a woman, I was deemed guilty of burdening the family. I went to the labor union for help, but the worker flipped through my residency permit and said casually, "Cross-border marital property disputes are messy for us to handle. Besides, your husband's family is local, we have to consider the community impact." As I walked out of the union building, the community nurse called, her tone sharp. "The free medical checkup you booked has been cancelled. We gave the spot to a local resident who needs it more." Later, I learned Ingrid had pulled strings through the church. Even the bakery owner downstairs, who used to slip me an extra cinnamon roll with a smile, now frowned and muttered "troublemaker" under her breath in Swedish. The final blow came when a small local community newspaper ran an anonymous article titled "The Plight of a Foreign Daughter-in-Law." No names were mentioned, but phrases like "suspected serious illness" and "family pressure" made it obvious who they were talking about. The comments were filled with malice: "Foreigners shouldn't hog local resources, divorce already, stop dragging them down." Those stares felt like tiny knives. I began wrapping myself in thick coats whenever I went out, terrified of being recognized. The day the biopsy results came back, the sun was surprisingly bright. The doctor smiled. "Ms. Isabella, it's just a benign cyst. Regular checkups are all you need, no treatment required." I sat on the hospital lawn for a long time, clutching the report that read, "No cancer cells detected." There was no ecstatic relief, only a numb sense of release. My phone rang. It was Marcus. I hung up immediately, then called my lawyer. I would sign the divorce papers. I never went back to that apartment. I asked my lawyer to deliver the signed agreement and my packed belongings. The diamond ring lay in a velvet box, alongside the traditional Swedish silverware and custom watch Marcus had given me. He later actually sent a lawyer's letter demanding the return of these gifts given on the premise of marriage. Even the first lipstick he'd bought me when we were dating was listed in the inventory. When my lawyer returned, he told me Ingrid's first reaction to the report had been to grab Marcus and yell, "She won't sue us, will she?" Marcus had burst into tears on the spot, begging the lawyer, "I need to see her. I need to apologize in person." I only replied calmly, "No need. Tell him to finalize the divorce proceedings on time." My lawyer hesitated, then added, "Marcus said he froze the account because he was afraid you'd be tricked by shady agents into useless treatments." I laughed until tears came. He was still making excuses for his selfishness, never once considering that his distrust had hurt me more than any cancer diagnosis ever could. The day after the divorce was finalized, I quit my job and moved to Oslo. My friend Emily had lined up a gallery for me there, and I rented a small apartment with a view of the fjord. I worked from sunrise to sunset, painting auroras, fjords, and all the warm hues I'd been afraid to use in Stockholm. Marcus didn't just send me dozens of messages, he called from unknown numbers, his voice breaking. "Bella, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have listened to Mom. Can we start over?" I hung up immediately, blocking each new number. What was even more ridiculous was Ingrid's attempt to send a message through my old Stockholm neighbor, offering me compensation of 100,000 kronor, on the condition that I tell people the divorce was mutual, so you don't ruin the Nelson name. Camilla posted a long essay on social media titled "Family is a Harbor, featuring a photo of the whole family at dinner. Between the lines, she implied I'd initiated the divorce for personal reasons, and that Marcus still cherished old feelings. Several Nelson relatives chimed in, "Marcus is too kind." I took screenshots, then had my lawyer send a cease and desist letter, this time attaching photos of Marcus's lawyer's letter and Ingrid's divorce agreement. Camilla deleted the post overnight and closed the comment section, never daring to mention my name again. My first encounter with Marcus came 2 years after I moved to Oslo. I was holding my first solo exhibition at the City Hall Gallery, and the opening drew a large crowd, including several art critics from Sweden. I was being interviewed by the Oslo Post when a familiar figure caught the corner of my eye. Marcus stood in front of my painting Promise beneath the aurora, a blonde woman in a tailored suit beside him, holding the hand of a toddler. She was exactly the kind of local wife Ingrid would approve of, I thought. "Ms. Isabella, what inspired this piece?" The reporter's question pulled me back. I smiled. It came from a difficult experience. But I learned that the aurora doesn't lose its glow just because someone misses it. As I spoke, I could feel Marcus's gaze on me, hot as a needle. After the interview, I told my assistant, I need to touch up my makeup backstage, and slipped into the lounge. Through the crack in the door, I saw him walking toward the exit. The blonde woman tugged at his sleeve, impatient. "Come on, what's so interesting about a foreign artist's paintings?" He glanced back toward the lounge, then finally left. When my assistant came in, she said, "He stood in front of that painting for 10 minutes. I picked up my makeup brush and smiled at my reflection, my eyes calm and empty. The second time was at Stockholm Airport. 3 years later, I'd returned to Sweden temporarily for a collaboration project. I was buying chocolate at the duty-free shop when a familiar voice made me freeze. "William, don't run." It was Marcus. I turned instinctively, ducking into a nearby cafe, my heart racing for no reason. Through the glass, I watched him chase a 5 or 6-year-old boy. The blonde woman pushed a stroller behind them, and Ingrid led the way, her hands full of luxury shopping bags, a contented smile on her face. "A hot cocoa, please," I told the barista, my eyes never leaving the window. Marcus caught up to the boy, kneeling to fix his askew hat, his movements still as gentle as ever. But that gentleness no longer had anything to do with me. He seemed to sense something, glancing toward the cafe. I bowed my head quickly, pretending to scroll through my phone. I didn't finish the now-cold cocoa until their figures disappeared at the boarding gate. My collaborator noticed my pale face. "Are you okay?" I smiled. "Just a little tired. Some goodbyes are better left unspoken." The third time was at an aurora viewing spot in Tromsø, a place I visited every year, where the auroras were more brilliant than anywhere else. I was adjusting my camera outside the tent when Camilla's voice cut through the air, "Mom, look over there. Is that the aurora starting?" My heart tightened. I turned to see the Nelson family, Ingrid in a wheelchair, pushed by Marcus, the blonde woman holding a baby, the older boy rolling around in the snow. They'd come here of all places. I didn't hesitate. I packed up my equipment and told the guide, I'd like to switch viewing spots. He looked surprised. "This one has the best view. I prefer quieter places." I slung my camera over my shoulder and walked into the snow. After about 10 minutes, I heard Marcus's voice behind me, "Bella." I paused for a split second, then kept walking, faster now, until I reached another cluster of tents. That night, the aurora was extraordinarily beautiful, green ribbons of light swirling across the sky like silk. When I pressed the shutter, tears suddenly fell. Not from sadness, but from relief. I took out my phone, posting a photo of the aurora to social media with the caption, "Some lights are meant to be admired alone." Late at night, an anonymous comment appeared, "I regret it." The IP address traced back to Stockholm. I didn't delete it, but I didn't reply either. I just switched my phone to airplane mode. When I left the next day, the guide told me, "A man was looking for you yesterday, said he knew you." I told him you'd already left. I thanked him with a smile, knowing full well it had been Marcus. Maybe he'd recognized my back in the snow, maybe he'd guessed my whereabouts from my social media. But none of that mattered anymore. Back in Oslo, I received an email from Stockholm, sent by Marcus's cousin Anna. She wrote that Marcus had been unhappy since I left, Ingrid nitpicked his new wife constantly, and Camilla fought with him over family assets. He always says he should have stood his ground back then, Anna wrote. Bella, can't you meet with him? He's really suffering. I stared at the email for a long time before hitting delete. He'd chosen his suffering, just as I'd chosen to leave. I opened my laptop and pulled up a new illustration file. On the canvas was a brilliant aurora, and beneath it, a girl smiling alone. Outside the window, the Oslo sun shone brightly, casting warm light over my painting. Last week, Emily came to visit me in Oslo, bringing news from Stockholm. Marcus had divorced his wife, Ingrid had suffered a stroke from anger, Camilla had run off with a portion of the family's money. He's been asking around for your contact information, Emily said. Do you want to see him? I was working on a new piece, a girl standing firm beneath the aurora, her back straight. I set down my brush. No. I have a new life now. There's no need to look back. Emily sighed, handing me a cup of hot cocoa. Have you really let go? I looked out at the fjord, where seagulls soared in the distance. It's not about letting go, it's about making peace. I took a sip, the sweetness spreading on my tongue. The fissure from back then has long been healed by the aurora. The tears in the snow, the despair in the hospital corridor, the humiliation in that family meeting, all of it was in the past. That evening, my mother called. She said Ingrid had contacted our relatives in Italy, asking her to persuade me to forgive Marcus. Mom, I interrupted, I'm doing well in Oslo. I have my own gallery, work I love, and friends who respect me. I don't need anyone's forgiveness to live. There was a long silence before she said, Bella, you've grown up. After hanging up, I walked out onto the balcony. The Oslo night sky was clear, dotted with bright stars. I thought back to the first time Marcus had taken me to see the aurora in Tromsø, when he'd said, Bella, we'll grow old here together. Now I realized those had just been youthful words, never meant to be kept. The only person you can ever truly rely on is yourself. I picked up my phone, drafting a new social media post. I attached the illustration of the girl beneath the aurora, writing, the best ending is for us to thrive in our own worlds. The moment I hit send, I heard a paintbrush clatter to the floor inside, soft, final, like the closing of a chapter. The snow will keep falling in Stockholm, and the Nelson family's drama will go on. But none of that concerns me anymore. My aurora is shining brightly, right here beneath the Oslo sky.